Thank you very much, and good afternoon also on my behalf. My name is JARNO LIMNÉLL, and I have actually worked with security more than 20 years. In military as an officer, in private companies like McAfee, and nowadays pretty much both in the Finnish company and also in two universities as professor in this field. And I come from Finland, and as you know, we Finns, we are pretty serious people. So you will not hear so many jokes during my presentation, because we are serious in Finland when we talk about security. But don't get me wrong, we Finns, we have other emotions also, as you can see in this picture. And the winter is coming. We have already the first snow in Finland, at least some part of our country at the moment. I have to say that it has been a good day for me to hear all these presentations in this excellent seminar. And I have really sensed that, okay, we have to understand the threats and the risks, but we are also, as security professionals, we are emphasizing that security and cybersecurity is primarily an enabler. It's something good if you take care of it. And I think this is probably the best national cybersecurity strategy that has been published so far, Australia's cybersecurity strategy. And on the front page of it, it says that cybersecurity enabling growth, innovation, and prosperity. And I think that's a very important point to start with when we are talking about the future of the cybersecurity, and a little bit also the future of the humankind as well. So I am going to talk to you about the 5 most important strategic trends, what we will see and what has to be emphasized in next couple of years. And even if we have been concentrating here today pretty much on details, we have talked about the cyber criminals, we have talked about some technological solutions. I think very often in seminars, in our discussions, we forget what is the most important in cybersecurity. And that is talented human beings. We often forget that the humans, us, we are the most valuable asset when we are talking about cybersecurity and future of it. And it is no coincidence that this guy, who is probably the most powerful person in cybersecurity in the whole world, he is the Admiral Michael Rogers in the United States. He is both the chief of the NSA and the commander of the US Cyber Command. And I can imagine that his calendar is pretty busy. But what he keeps doing a lot nowadays is visiting universities and other schools, giving speeches, like last week in the Columbus State University, and trying to hire talented young people to work for the NSA and the Cyber Command. Why? Well, you can just look at the cybersecurity strategy of the DoD of the United States, and the #1 strategic goal, what is presented in that strategy. Major investment in cyber personnel, talented human beings in this business. And of course, it's not only the United States. This is from Russia. Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, he has been saying publicly many times that they have launched, Russian government has launched a big headhunt in order to get good people to work for the government, in order to create sophisticated cyber capabilities. And we know also in some occasions there has been alternative to those people who has been convicted to go to the prison. That, no, you don't probably have to go to prison. come to work for the government, like intelligence service, like FSB. And of course, it's the very same issue when we are talking about the private companies, like the company I am working. Our biggest challenge at the moment, as many other companies in Finland, in Europe, and in the United States, for example, we don't have enough cybersecurity professionals. And at the same time, the very big companies, they are also hiring cybersecurity specialists to be in their board seats, in top of the company, because this is so important. You have to take care of the security in this digitalization in order to be competitive in this business. And there has been many interesting researches lately published, like this one from the Frost and Sullivan, saying that within the next few years we will have 1.5 million global workforce shortfall in information security specialists in this field, or maybe even sooner. And according to the studies, the in-house lack of expertise is the biggest challenge at the moment what the companies are facing in the cybersecurity field. But then, of course, it's very important also to understand that when we are talking about the cybersecurity skills, what are those skills that are needed today, and especially within the next few years. And this is in Finnish because we just finished a large research in Finland, finding out what are the main skill gaps what we have in Finland in this field, and how we will improve those skills in coming years. And of course, it's very challenging because the skills what are needed today can be very obsolete, as you know, within the next few years. And I think it's also in our responsibility to work in this cybersecurity field at the moment to increase the awareness, especially concerning on the millennials, that there are very interesting jobs in this field. And I would say that when we are talking about humans in cybersecurity, and we need them a lot in the coming years, I would say that the most valuable skills may not concentrate on specific technology, but ability to understand the big picture. So trend number one is that even if there is ongoing so-called cyber arms race in the world, I would say that there is even the most frantic contemporary race at the moment in cybersecurity is for talented individuals. I think many of us have been following very closely the presidential election in the United States. Well, we will see within the next few weeks who will be elected it. I think this was a very interesting article recently in Newsweek proposing that what about the next presidential election? Could there be an artificial intelligence candidate in this election? And I think they had very good arguments. Artificial intelligence would probably work much harder, would not be influenced by the lobbyists, and probably would not have any sex scandals, like some of the candidates may have. Well, the spokesperson of the IBM told publicly that at the moment the IBM Watson is not considering to be as a presidential candidate. But I have to say that I would really like to see the presidential debate between the robot with artificial intelligence and the Donald Trump, and who will win that debate. But anyway, when we are talking about the future, also in the coming years, like we have been talking here in this great seminar today, everything is more or less going to be connected. Everything that can be digitalized will be digitalized sooner or later. And we as security professionals, we keep warning that for us, from the security point of view, the smart is same as exploitable and vulnerable. So you have to take the security. You have to understand that in this development of the technology and the digitalization, you have to understand security as by design, which, as we know very well at the moment, is not the case. Like we just heard, the latest massive DDoS attacks in the United States. So I would emphasize and encourage for each one of us, when we are talking about the future in this field, to emphasize the culture of responsibility, to take care of the security. But I will go even beyond security in this way. This is an article yesterday from the New York Times describing the latest developments in the weapon systems in the United States Army, creating weapons that can identify targets and make their own decisions, kill or not. And whatever technology I am actually thinking at the moment, artificial intelligence, self-driving cars, biotechnology, and all the other issues, just to name a few, I think very soon we will face serious moral and ethical questions also in our security business. And I'm not sure who is responsible to providing these answers. So when we are talking about the future, when we are talking about the future of the cybersecurity, when we are talking about the future of the technology, I really hope that it's not some technicians or some professors who are thinking about these ethical questions. I really hope that this is something that we, more or less the whole humankind, is thinking about, because this really concerns us, everyone. And I would also like to raise a question that should we also consider what not, for example, digitalize? Because now we are digitalizing more or less everything. But are there some areas that we should not do it in that way? Or how much control we want to give of our lives to the machines or to the corporations who are building and operating them? So trend number 2 is that the new era of the technology needs strong emphasis on ethics. And I see that ethics will be much more important and integral part of the security and cybersecurity when we think about the future. As you know, there has been happening a lot during the last 2 years in cyberspace. Probably a lot also which we don't know even that those things are happening. I would summarize what is happening at the moment is that especially, of course, some of the nation-state actors, but especially the nation-states, they are really testing the boundaries of the cyber battlefield, what is going at the moment. What they are allowed to do, what they are allowed not to do, and especially what they are able to do, and with what kind of political risk. And I think that this should have awakened us. This cyber attack against the electrical grid last December in Ukraine. But it didn't. And when I'm thinking about any wars, conflicts, what are ongoing at the moment in the world, there is also cyber element in it. And I think one trend is that cyber sabotage is emerging. And we will see these kind of cases, what we saw, unfortunately, in Ukraine last December. We will see them and experience them more in coming years. And I think it was very interesting example, and this is an ongoing story. You have been reading about these compromises of US parties, institutions, individuals connected to the presidential elections. And a few weeks ago, and I think this was a significant moment when the Department of the Homeland Security and the intelligence community of the United States, when they officially accused that Russia is behind these compromises and these leaks concerning on presidential elections. And they did it publicly. Then at the same time, Russia is saying that, no, we are not doing it. You have no evidence. That's rubbish, what you are saying. And it's pretty hard talk out there at the moment what different nation states, for example, in this particular case, are telling to the public. So we often forget that when we talk about cybersecurity, it is actually the cyberspace. It is primarily a political domain. And I think it has been a huge change during the last few years when the cybersecurity issues has shifted from the so-called low politics, background politics, into the highest realm of the high politics, what is happening at the moment. And the new ways to utilize cyberspace in order to pursue your political objectives are being credited more or less all the time. And in much more severe way that, for example, this one, just a few days ago, when the Twitter account of the John Podesta, who is the campaign chief of the Hillary Clinton, his Twitter account was compromised, and then someone was tweeting saying that I have switched the teams and I am supporting Donald Trump at the moment. And of course there is a lot of discussion at the moment concerning about the presidential election, the 8th November, that will there be problems in elections concerning about the cyber security. And after the public accusation of the United States, for example, John Biden, the Vice President of the United States, he has been talking quite a lot about that US will hit back and there will be proportional response, whatever that means. And now there's a lot of speculations that what will happen, what is the proportional response of the United States, that what they will do against Russia. Maybe you will get some kind of hint from this presidential policy directive of the United States, which was released last summer. But we'll see. But I personally estimate that US will send a very strong message as a response to Russia, and that will not be limited only in cyberspace. And at the same time, especially here in Europe, in Baltics, in Finland, we are talking about quite a lot nowadays about the hybrid warfare, political military hybrid warfare environment. And I think in this environment, cyber operations, they fit there very well. Because as you know, usually it's very hard to locate who is behind these attacks. There are still not so much political risk to do these cyber operations. And at the same time also the international law concerning on cyber operations remains as a gray area. And pretty often the trend is also that the governments, they are outsourcing their cyber operations, so not doing them by themselves, but using some proxy groups or hacker groups to do this or carry out these operations. And the role of the non-kinetic actions in today's world, wars, that is increasing. So when we usually talk about these issues, we talk from the micro-security point of view, meaning technical level, maybe operational level, sometimes in the macro security level, meaning strategic level. But when I'm thinking about the future of the cybersecurity, I would add here one more layer above the strategic level, and that is politics. And I think when we are trying to estimate what is happening and what will happen in this field in coming years, it's very important that we should not separate cyber from the wider political and strategic contexts. So trend number 3 is the world is moving towards greater strategic use of cyber capabilities. And the politics concentrating on cyber affairs is needed much more. So when we talk about security, 2016, I think it's very important to understand what is the new normal in security, not only cybersecurity. And I would summarize with this slide what is the new normal in security. The speed of change, both in physical world and in cyberspace. We are living in unpredictable instability. I think especially in the Baltics and in Finland, you really know what I mean. But I think the most challenging is the last point, the integration of the physical and digital world. Because we too often, when we're talking about from the strategic or from the political point of view, these issues, we separate that there are cyber issues in this artificial, man-made, technological-based digital world, and then there are physical security issues, physical security. But I would say, especially in the coming years, that picture is wrong, and this picture is right. We really have to understand how closely these physical and digital worlds and physical and digital security will be intertwined to each other. So we have to be able to integrate cybersecurity to security. Let me give you an example what I'm trying to say. This is an excellent report. This is the Global Risks Assessment of the World Economic Forum concerning about the risks that we as a humankind will face 2016. And the more you go to the up right corner, the likelihood and the impact of different risks are increasing. And you can see in the right up corner, there are water crises, migration, cyber attacks. But I think it's much more wiser to understand our security environment via this picture. And especially that when we are talking about the security, yes, cyber threats are an integral part of this security. But if we are concentrating too much on cyber issues or one cyber threat or risk, we don't fully understand the big picture. And I think the future of the security is especially in these interactions between different threats and risks. And it's the very same issue when we are talking about cybersecurity from the military point of view. More or less, it's not understood so much as solely as a standalone issue, but as part of more or less all the activities what the militaries are having. So when we are talking about the future, I would say that in the coming years we will be paying attention a lot more on the physical layers that enables this digital domain. Then I'm talking about especially approximately 300 sea cables who are transmitting our data or whatever we are doing, our bank transactions, our emails. Physical layer. And of course, it's the same thing when we are thinking about the 3D printing. The virtual is coming physical. Or one way to affect your opponent is, of course, to use the so-called kinetic cyber, using that, meaning that you do things in the digital world, but the consequences appears in the physical world, like this power grid hack. Or one way to affect is that you eliminate your opponent skillful hackers, like what has happened in Middle East. ISIS have had too good hackers, and one way to affect them is to kill them, like has already happened. And from the military point of view, there are relatively few so-called cyber-only operations. You have to see really the big picture. And that is the reason, this is from the other World Economic Forum's report, when we are talking about the future job skills, I think this goes very well the future of the security as well. 2015 and 2020, number one is the same, complex problem solving. And I always very much encourage for my students that even if they are concentrating on some technological issues, it's very valuable and important for them to understand also the big picture, what is happening. So trend number 4 is the line between physical and digital security is blurring. And then my final point. The trend is at the moment, and this will increase, I believe, is that we are moving more from knowns to unknowns. And I think one of problematic when we talk about cybersecurity is that we too often concentrate what we know and what we observe. I think we should think much more cyber methods which we have not been seen yet, which have not been used yet, or which we don't actually even know yet. We just have to imagine them. So number 5 trend is big question mark. This is something what we don't know, but it will happen. Because we know only one thing for sure when we talk about the future of the security. It surprises us. And usually it surprises us in a way that we don't even fully understand it in advance. But I think that is the most important thing why I think it's so interesting to work with cybersecurity. Thank you very much.
Yes, Jarno, I absolutely and truly agree about mix of these worlds. Now, one thing is that some hackers are messing with some computers and, you know, there's a funny cartoons running on the screen and that's a virus and, okay, boys with toys. There was always been. But completely another thing is that my home loses the power, the electricity. And that means a whole bunch of things to various people. It's not only light, it's everything. It's heating systems, it's misconfiguration of those heat pumps, etc., etc. And people will blame the electricity company or the grid builders, or they will probably not build the hackers because, well, nowadays we take them for granted. They do bad stuff. And it's like, you know, there were earthquakes hundreds of years, there were tsunamis hundreds of years, and there are hackers hundreds of years, since the 80s, but nevertheless. So this ethics and responsibility. Now, on one hand, company management can be responsible, and they might even be ethical, but they might even disclose this information, and so the rest of the world maybe can learn something from that experience. But there might be cases when it's not the case. And so it's a double blame then, if you know what I mean. So if the electricity company is being hacked, then they are the stupid guys, not the hacker guys. So what happens with the society, with the individuals? How do they feel that stuff? How do they react to that? How will they react to that? What is the trends in terms of consumer satisfaction in terms of security? I'm sorry for a long one.
Thank you very much. I think that's a very important topic and question. And actually two main points. First of all, I think that we don't fully even understand now how dependent our societies, our businesses, our daily lives are already in this digitalized world. Yeah. Because if you don't have it, I think our lives would be very different at that moment. And the second point is that, of course, bad things will happen in physical world and in digital world. And some of them are caused intentionally, but some of them are caused unintentionally. And I think one of the key issues what we are paying a lot of attention in the big picture at the moment in Finland, when we are talking about the future of our security, we are talking about the resilience, but not only the resilience from the physical point of view, or how fast we can put up our systems, for example. We are talking about very much about the mental resilience of the average Finns. How long, as you said, they will manage without electricity. Because we had a large research recently in Finland, and 2/3 of the Finns said that they will manage without running water and without electricity maximum 2 days. And my question, of course, as a security person is that what happens when it comes to the third day?
People start to freeze, they start to riot. Okay, the Finns may not be the persons who will riot and go out on the streets and burn cars and so on. But nevertheless, they will not blame the hackers. They will blame the government in that case for not doing anything. And remember, we focused on e-skills and education of the people, so they do not make stupid mistakes, so they know at least something about security, not to, become victims because of not knowing, simply. But now it seems to me that it turns that citizens are demanding this protection, and they're demanding protection from disinformation and stuff like this.
Are they really?
So they don't take, I have a feeling that the consumer doesn't take any responsibility himself anymore.
I think you have a very important point, because as I think many of us has been during last few days talk about quite a lot and discussed quite a lot about the DDoS attacks against the DUN in the United States last Friday. And as we all know, hundreds of thousands or even millions of the Internet of the Things were utilized in order to produce that attack. And why? Because there is so poor security in these smart devices, or no security at all. And I think one reason for that is that when we go to the shop, when we buy a smart toaster, smart whatever we are buying, we don't actually ask at the moment, most of the consumers, about the security, how security is taken care of, how I can update these smart devices which I am not buying. So I think one way to get up here is to raise awareness of the average consumers also in this field.
Yeah, but one thing is, setting up a password, a simple instruction. Now, have you seen the instruction of the latest cell phones? It fits usually on one sheet of paper. Mm-hmm. Turn on, step 1, step 2, step 3, go.
I agree.
And before that, it was manuals. It was manuals, both for the computers and so. So we actually, as a businesses who produce these IoT devices, etc., we are talking about the necessity of educating the market. But on the other hand, take a look at the manual. It almost doesn't exist. So maybe some certification, maybe it will come to the legislation, maybe it will come to some, I don't know, superpower that will just monitor all the network and reduce some risks. But on the other hand, people don't want that. They want to have this freedom. They want to share, and they listen to all the social media and everything. And Trump is on almost every single tweet. So somebody is doing a fairly good job. So we can't simply tell people that they are not educated, they are stupid, and they are to blame.
Absolutely no. But that's one part of the story, of course. Yes.
Okay. Right. I want to thank you with a small present from us for your time and for your wonderful presentation. Here's a certificate.
Thank you.
Hopefully you will hang it somewhere visible in your office.
I will. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. A nice applause to JARNO.